All right, today we are diving into a really fascinating story. It's one that connects a very specific Irish bloodline to, believe it or not, a cosmic drama. We're going to be weaving together genetics, ancient myths, and a hidden history of suppression. So yeah, let's get right into it.
I mean, think about this for a second. What if the history that's literally encoded in your genes wasn't just about, where your ancestors happened to come from, but about who they were on a cosmic scale? A history that's not just about countries and borders, but about a centuries-long battle for consciousness itself, a battle recorded in a single, incredibly resilient bloodline. So, let's start with our first section, A Secret in the Blood. What's so interesting here is that our story doesn't begin in myth. It starts with science, grounding this whole incredible tale in the McDade family lineage. Okay, so you see this term here, haplogroup RM222. This is a huge deal in Irish genealogy. For a long time, it was actually called the Nile of the Nine Hostages marker, and people thought it linked millions of men across the world to this one legendary Irish high king. But what's really cool is that the latest science shows it's actually way older than that, and it points to a seriously ancient and stable lineage in northwest Ireland.
And here's where it gets really wild. What if this very specific DNA marker connects to the cosmos itself? What if it's not just a record of earthly kings, but a direct link to a divine origin? Well, to even start to understand that, we need to step out of the lab and into the world of Gnosticism.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Fall of Sophia. You see, the Gnostics had a completely different creation myth. It wasn't centered on sin, but on a kind of cosmic mistake, an error that had profound consequences for every single one of us.
Okay, so here's the Gnostic universe in a nutshell. It all begins with something called the monad. That's the absolute ultimate source of everything. From the monad comes the pleroma, which is basically a perfect realm of pure light. Inside this realm live these divine beings called aeons. And the last, and maybe most important of them all, is an aeon named Sophia, which, as you might guess, means wisdom. So the story goes that Sophia, in her ambition to know the source, kind of went rogue and acted alone, which caused her to fall from the pleroma. This cosmic event is what created the flawed, material world that we live in, a world ruled by a lesser, ignorant creator called the demiurge. And during this fall, sparks of that original divine light, the pneuma or the stars inside, got trapped here. According to the Gnostics, that divine spark is inside all of us, just waiting to be remembered.
Now for Section 3, the soul's 4 stages. And stay with me, because this ancient myth finds a fascinating echo in, of all places, modern psychology, specifically in the work of Carl Jung. He described a path to inner wisdom that mirrors Sophia's story almost perfectly. It's pretty amazing.
Jung's theory was that for a man to become psychologically whole, he has to integrate his unconscious feminine side, which he called the anima. And he said this happens in 4 stages. It starts with Eve, which is pure instinct. Then it moves to Helen, the romantic ideal. After that, it elevates to Mary, who represents spiritual devotion. And finally, you get to Sophia, the ultimate guide to your inner life, the personification of wisdom itself.
And right there, that's the connection. It just clicks. The Gnostic Sophia, a cosmic being of wisdom, is perfectly mirrored by the Jungian Sophia, the highest state of inner wisdom, or gnosis. It suggests that the quest to reclaim that trapped divine spark isn't an external journey at all, but an internal psychological one.
And that leads us to Section 4, the Trail of the Grail. So we have a divine spark, and we have a psychological map to find it. But what about a physical one? The source we're exploring proposes that a literal royal bloodline has been carrying this gnosis through history all along.
This is where the story completely reframes the Holy Grail. We're not talking about a cup, we're talking about sang real, which literally translates to royal blood. The theory is that this is the actual lineage of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, a physical carrier of that divine DNA, the stars inside.
So this timeline tracks the supposed journey of this royal blood. It starts in Judea, it moves to Gaul, which is modern-day France, and eventually it integrates with the Milesian kings of Ireland. Then, in the year 1208, a specific family emerges, the McDavids, whose name actually means son of David, and they pop up right in the heartland of that RM222 haplogroup. The connections are pretty mind-blowing.
So next up, Section 5, a war on gnosis. I mean, just think about it. A bloodline with a direct connection to the divine would be a fundamental threat to any institution based on external authority, right? And according to our source, a systemic, centuries-long war was waged against it.
The first major attack was physical. After a failed rebellion in 1608, in which the McDavids played a key part, the English crown launched the plantation of Ulster, seizing their ancestral lands. The Gnostic view of this is that it wasn't just about territory. It was about strategically severing the bloodline's deep biological connection to the land itself, their spiritual power source.
After that, the suppression became incredibly systematic. The penal laws were like a forensic toolkit designed to dismantle the culture piece by piece. They broke up land inheritance, so estates couldn't stay in the family. They banned the native Gaelic language in courts and schools, and they locked them out of any position of power. It was a methodical campaign of cultural and economic erasure.
And the effect was just devastating. By 1703, the native Catholic Irish, who were the vast majority of the population, owned less than 10% of their own land. The dispossession was nearly total.
And the final blows were even more brutal. The source material frames the Great Hunger not as just a famine, but as a biological weapon designed to finally break the lineage's resilience. And even before that, under Cromwell, hundreds of thousands of Irish people were transported, sold as slaves and indentured servants to the Americas and the Caribbean, scattering the bloodline across the ocean.
But that brings us to our final section, the King's Return. Because this story doesn't end with eradication. It ends with the idea of reclaiming the scepter, a restoration of sovereignty, but not on a battlefield. This one happens within the self.
So let's tie this all together. The ARM222 DNA is the biological proof. The history of Ireland is the record of the long war against it, and the Gnostic Jungian framework? Well, that's the key. It's the key to understanding what was lost and how it can be reclaimed in the modern world. And this quote from the source really gets to the heart of it all. The battle is now fought within the self. That Gnostic false god, the demiurge, is a perfect stand-in for the ego, that internal voice of fear and control that we all have. So the real fight for sovereignty is the struggle for our pneuma, our stars inside, to overcome that internal tyrant. Which leaves us with this one final thought to ponder. What if the grandest stories of cosmic gods and forgotten kings aren't just myths from the past? What if they're a living inheritance, a secret waiting to be unlocked within our very own DNA?